Hello, everybody. I'm here and I am going to read to you the first section of The Princess Royale. It is primarily mostly about Princess Anne, but it discusses this distinction of the Princess Royale styling. It usually goes to the oldest daughter, and it was seen with Princess Mary and Princess Anne, but it also was given to Princess Victoria, Queen Victoria's oldest daughter, and I have discussed that there's only like 7 princess royal stylings, and um, I think Charlotte, when she is styled as the Princess Royal, and she will be. Um, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and Princess Anne, she is the current Princess Royal. And I'm just going to add this so you can see. I want you guys to see, I think it's better when you can see the picture. I really want you guys to see the picture. So that's what I'd like for you to see, so you don't have to look at me, but take a look at Anne. I mean, when you see her and Trooping of the Color, when you see her, look at all that. Look how dutiful she is. And, her picture is better than mine, but look at that. And, one of the things that I read when I read through this whole book was the closeness of Anne and how close she is, not just to all her brothers, because Prince Andrew actually did become and is the godfather to Zara and Peter Phillips. So, such a fascinating story. But she was so close, and that she has a very close relationship with Charles. And again, the role of the siblings is to support the current monarch. And you know, she does a wonderful job. She puts us all to shame, and you know, I'm a good 15 years younger than her or more, but she's so impressive, at least to me. So I would like to read to you the first chapter, and this chapter is called The Style. The first part is the style and the distinction. It's broken up into 3 parts. So, what I'm going to do for all of you guys is to read it a section at a time, and you can choose to speed up the speed, or you can choose to go on to Audible and listen to it, because it is only 1 credit, and in my opinion it is a worthy listen. So on the first part, chapter 1, it's June 1987, and this is when Princess Anne got her styling. She got her styling as the Princess Royal. It was quite late. Usually they have to wait for the previous Princess Royal to die, and then it's up to the monarch to decide when, and so here's the first chapter. It was one of Princess Anne's average active weeks, with 3 or 4 workings days in London, patterned with a number of engagements of astonishing variety, except that particular June week was brightened for Anne by the affectionate anticipation of her father's birthday. Prince Philip, he was 66. On Tuesday, June the 10th, 1987, the day before Britain went to the polls to elect its 13th post-war parliament. At the risk of being hung, drawn, and quartered, I think people are going to be bored to tears by the time the election comes, the princess had foretold earlier in May, in addressing townswomen's guilds massed in the Albert Hall. Tedium there was, indeed, with the ceaseless television repetition of truths and untruths. But members of the royal family do not vote in elections. and there was no time for boredom for the Queen's busy daughter. In the morning, setting out for Buckingham Palace, she visited the city to open the new Guild Hall on the farmers and the Fletchers. The city rebuilt traditional shrine of agriculture and of the arrow makers, who are reputedly descended from the craftsmen who petitioned in 1371 for the separation from the bow makers and who to this day strive to foster a worldwide trade in textiles. Princess Anne is a member, a liveryman, a freeman, a master of war or warden of 7 of London's 40 guilds: the saddlers, the farriers, the fishmongers, the farmers, the grocers, carmen, and the lorners, who still pursue the making of bits and bridles for horses. In her official capacity, the princess celebrates centenaries, attends luncheons and receptions. She sits on boards of trade associated schools. She awards prizes and opens exhibitions. She takes a full share in a myriad of tasks to which royalty have given support and leadership for centuries. After lunch with the Fletchers and the farmers, the princess hurried away to outward bound demonstrations. Then that evening, in the classical atmosphere of Carlton House Terrace, she was admitted as a Fellow of the Royal Society, that august Academy of Sciences. The Queen, who had herself been admitted to the learned royal, who, an age no more than 20, took note of the phenomenon. Her daughter, at 30, has also recently taken over as Chancellor of the London University. From then, 18-year-old Queen Mother, Princess Anne, now held 20 presidencies, from the Equestrian International Federation to the Royal Agricultural Society, and nearly 50 patronages besides, lending each an active measure of her time and support. The Queen rarely asked to see Princess Anne's engagement book, and she was seldom shown it. But in May 1987, it caught her imagination when the newly published 1986 annual report of Save the Children Fund came to her desk for her particular attention as the patron. Save the Children, that is a fund. It is something that Anne has been significantly involved in since she was young. So you'll hear more about Save the Children and how Anne is a patron of that. An inset page was headed President's Message with the duplicate signature Anne. 1986 marks the 16th and 60th anniversary of Save the Children's operations in the United Kingdom, and there is still a pressing need for our work. Poor housing, high unemployment, social isolation, and common problems and their effect on children can be severe. At the Somerville Center of Birmingham, I saw one of the many SCF schemes working to improve the quality of intercity life. In a depressed area of Glasgow, the Latymer Youth Project is one of the very few signs of hope for the long-term unemployed grant involving the teenagers themselves and a program to build up their self-esteem and sense of initiative. Gypsies and travelers have long been subject to the discrimination, and the project I visited in Hammersmith is typical of our efforts to ensure access to the decent living conditions to which all children have and are entitled to. In Sunderland, young offenders on the intermediate scheme told me they find it a tougher option than custody. Overseas, the huge famine relief operation is still needed to cope with another year of patchy harvest. As well as touring emergency programs in Sudan, my trip to Africa gave me the opportunity to see 2 countries where the SCF is providing key staff to help develop services which will benefit thousands of children. Immunization and training for health workers is our main thrust in Mozambique. Medical care for the children or Zanzibar will be strengthened. By setting an example, we can bring influence to bear on governments. the international community, and the British public. This year's income figures give welcome reassurances. Our supporters are vital partners in helping some of the world's most deprived communities to build a better future for their children. Such was the gist of the message. The latest succinct contribution in the output of 16 years of effort, and the Queen may well have found herself also considering Anne's 11 colonelcies, including her 4 in Canada, 2 in New Zealand, and 1 in Australia. Together with the patronages, it all amounted to an enormous expenditure of energy. Time and again she had heard her daughter asserting, "It's no good taking it up unless one can really be useful." Anne's maxims, doubling up when one can, fitting in 2 jobs, are equally evocative of her energetic approach. Among the usual early morning palace sounds was the beat of the helicopter thrust as Anne took off from the palace lawns for another set of engagements, perhaps packing 2 or 3 chopper flights into one day. She was inevitably familiar with all names of the Queen's flight crews. Shortly before Philip's birthday, she had the occasion to fly to Hull for a demonstration of the riding for the Disabled Association. Then to squirrel off again soon after lunch to a similar meet of the Doncaster group, and so home by her 3rd helicopter lift. At around the same time was an air hop to Lymington, taking her 9-year-old son, Peter, along with her on the adventure. She had to collect a £50,000 check for a new lifeboat. The program involved taking a trip to assemble a 22-foot inflatable lifeboat, taking the helm herself to the immense satisfaction of the 3-man RNLI crew, and getting soaked in the process. It seemed a fair bet that the newspaper would report and picture the exploit the next morning. It was all useful publicity for the lifeboat institution. I could well have been the Variety Club's presentation to Princess Anne, Oliver International Humanitarian Award, which her parents watched on television one May evening and decided that the Queen, to enhance her daughter's status, the program included video clips of Anne in Mozambique, Beirut, and the Sudan, and similar shots of her visits to parents and children against the desolate background of Britain's inner cities. One of the program's distinguished contributors recalled that the humanitarian had previously been given to people of the stature of Winston Churchill, Albert Schweitzer, and Leonard Cheshire. The rumors of a more illustrious title had been ripening like grapes, not through one season, but from year to year. Within 5 months of the death of her Aunt Mary, the Princess Royale, on Anne's 15th birthday, and successfully with her 18th, 20th, and 21st celebrations, the lead writers and columnists had regarded announcement as imminent. It was an annoying side aspect of every personal landmark. Still, it presents an undercurrent even at her wedding. Reporters questioned at times had to be paired across a stable yard. "It's nothing to do with me," the princess protested, which was true. By an unwritten code of queenship, the business of the sovereign remained separate and inviolate, and her relationship with her children entirely different from that of any other mother. Undeterred, the newspaper picked up the supposition that Princess Anne had declined the title, and preferring the honor to be reserved for middle-aged, an inference totally without foundation. No one was more adept in conversation than the Queen in avoiding an unwanted topic, blotting it out by ignoring it, freezing it out of mind. just as she had abolished the tiresome, if decorative and romantic, presentation at court of young women debutantes, and had similarly abandoned the masculine custom of levee. So some considered that even the long tradition of a princess royale might have become outdated to the queen. There was indeed a body of young opinion that regarded it as an outmoded and fustian accessory of monarchy. It was just too old hat for the times. A richly named critic, Hugh Montgomery Massenburg, pointed out that the queen had become more cautious and more careful than her predecessors in bestowing the honors that lie within her personal aegis. The Garter, the Order of Merit, and the varied classes of the Royal Victorian Order. The Royal was no different, except in its unique and exceptional feminine application. By March 1987, it had been in abeyance for 21 years. It was the longest break since the death of another Princess Anne, George II's daughter, in the mid-18th century. Some already regarded it as a bygone, its very existence heading towards oblivion. The newspapers had seized their prolonged bouts of guessing. If the queen had pondered the problem, she now came to a conclusion, and immediately discerned the real pleasure it would give Prince Philip if a modern revival of the honor for Anne could coincide with his birthday. Isn't that interesting? To bestow it on Prince Philip's birthday? Especially when they're so alike. Anyways, on June the 2nd, as it happened, Philip awoke to his birthday in Sweden. He'd been presiding over a meeting of the World Wildlife International, which led on to a weekend with King Carl and his Queen Sylvia, who were celebrating their 11th wedding anniversary. And there was another occasion to mark for Philip's sisters. Princess Sophie was also in the party with her husband, Prince George of Hanover. It was her birthday too, only 16 days away, when they could, brother and sister, enjoy at least a pretense of privately sharing 1 or 2 birthday hours over coffee and croissants. But by mid-morning, Philip was flying back to London to his own heaped basket of greeting cards, his own domestic celebration. This year he knew there was to be a birthday luncheon with all the family, at which he would hear a mysterious but very happy announcement. Princess Anne's subtle compliment to her papa had been to arrange for herself a morning of naval duties, flying down to Gosport to the shore establishment Centurion to inspect the WRNS unit and declare open a new department termed by officialdom a Manpower Information Office. Yes, truly, she laughed, back in the palace, manpower information for Wrens. Then she hurried off to change for lunch. For her chief's commandant's uniform into a light summer frock. Okay. The Queen, too, had a busy morning. Having summoned a meeting of the Privy Council, the ancient element of monarchical government with which the Queen conducts the administration of her high office. Of nearly 300 councillors, any 3 may form a quorum. That morning, she first received Lord Hailsham in private audience. Then, venerable figure, whom she had watched on television laboriously climbing the steps of the throne with his stick to tender the Queen for her speech for Parliament. Again, aged nearly 80, he'd come to take away his leave as Lord Chancellor and Lord President of the Council after 30 years. And this was apparently the occasion when the Queen first spoke of her decision to name her daughter the Princess Royale. Sworn to secrecy by the solemn vows of her office, the 3 appointed Privy Councillors who awaited the Queen, the 1844 room on the ground floor of the palace were then told in turn the Lord Denham, captain of the gentlemen attorney at arms, Lord Belstad, his ministry once a privy council committee, Baroness Young, with Mr. Daney, the clerk of the council. All four heard the tidings of the creation of the Princess Royale with unfeigned approval and pleasure. That week, a new privy seal was to be made to mark the incoming government, and by the Queen's special dispensation, Lord Hailsham was given the old seal, not only as a souvenir of his many years as Lord Chancellor, but as a keepsake of the special occasion, a rare and happy gesture. Prince Edward apparently termed his father's celebration luncheon as simply swell. As well as the children, it was one of those occasions when the Queen invited the entire family, the Wales and the Yorks, all the Ogilvies, the Kents, and Princess Margaret with her son and daughter. The Duke and Duchess of Kent came with their eldest son, the Earl of St. Andrews. Having only the previous day gained the Queen's consent for his engagement to his Cambridge fellow student, Miss Silvana Tomaselli, and his future bride shared for a time in the birthday honors. The Duke of Gloucester returned home from Madrid. Captain Mark Phillips arrived in time to meet his wife's helicopter on the lawn, and the single notable absentee was the Queen Mother, having previously agreed to be entertained at Claridge's on her 60 years as Colonel-in-Chief of the King's Own Yorkshires. Also at the palace for the occasion were the in-laws, the Phillips, the Spencers, the Fergusons. In his birthday speech, Prince Philip was at his genial best, never more so than when he brought his listeners to silence for his dear wife's message for you all. The Queen had been pleased to declare that our dear daughter shall henceforth bear the style and title of Princess Royal. Amid the instant applause, the Prince of Wales was swift to propose Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal's health. The footman had magically charged the glasses, and no doubt Prince Philip led the rush of hugs, kisses, and congratulations. But at precisely 3:05 p.m., Anne and Mark flew from the palace by helicopter on a mission to a home farm trust project in Kent. As much as the morning had belonged to Papa, the afternoon was dedicated to Mark's interest in a patronage. That evening, Prince Philip and Prince Edward were dining at the Edinburgh Award dinner, and the fledgling Princess Royal and her husband returned from their outing to sup up with the Queen. It would not have been unexpected had the conversation turned to the practical side of being Princess Royal. One of the librarians at Windsor had investigated the position. Prince Charles had automatically become the Duke of Cornwall, with all its duchy lands, on the day of his mother's accession to the throne, a heritage ordained by Edward III as long ago as the Charter of 1337. But a Princess Royal remains a rarity within the royal scene as a queen regnant. The Queen could tell of her great-grandfather Edward VII's dilemma early this century when, wishing to make his eldest daughter Princess Royal, he had asked his close and expert friend Arthur Ellis to explain the forms and the precedents, and Ellis had replied outright, "Sire, there are none." As the Lord Chamberlain's comptroller, Ellis could call upon the historic lore of the Herald's College and the extensive knowledge of the Garter King of Arms, and Ellis himself was no mean authority, his knowledge of the protocol being quite unrivaled. But it appears certain that an early documentation of the subject was destroyed during the 11 years of Cromwell's Commonwealth. Not a very happy situation to have to report to the rather choleric Edward Saxe-Coburg. Through all the dynasties since the Norman conquest, one might account 45 queens of England, and the royal daughters, they were innumerable, but only 6, perhaps only 5, were Princess Royale with an established and definitive right to the title. Anne had become the 7th Princess Royale, and of our island history. However, no particular duties have ever been specified, no rights have been prescribed. In itself, the honor has not changed. Anne's memorial bearings differed by a label of 3 points argent. King Edward VII has been crowned in August 1902, but his daughter Louise, she was the eldest of the three sisters, and she was not declared Princess Royale. And no doubt this was perhaps a feature that Queen Elizabeth II noticed especially, because until 9 November 1905, the direction appeared in the King's birthday honors with no other mention, nothing in the London Gazette. There was no document of letters patent. There was no hint in the patent rolls. The Queen's second cousin, the 3rd Duke of Fife, could find neither a royal warrant nor letters patent in his family's archives. Princess Anne knew, of course, that the title was once conferred, it's conferred for life. Like the garter, it could be withdrawn or relinquished, although the resignation of official retirement of a Princess Royale has never been known. The degree of permanence tends to give a seniority, a prestige. It's enhanced with the passage of time. As Queen Victoria learned, it's never an entitlement of birth for the eldest daughter of the sovereign. But clearly, Queen Elizabeth's timing in 1987, it gave heed to all her daughter's maturing qualities, and not least, the recognized respect and affection of the nation. Okay, we just got a few pages to read left, so almost most of the events have been planned months ahead. This special week thereafter gained a heightened pleasure. First thoughts for the majority of the morning of Thursday, 11 June, they were the election victory of Margaret Thatcher. Not only Britain's first woman prime minister, but she was now beginning her 3rd term in office. But as the year's president of the Royal Agricultural Society, Princess Anne, she flew to Bedfordshire for her 2nd visit to a farming enterprise within 48 hours. Later, continuing the genial atmosphere of the week, the novitiate Princess Royale was a hostess in the evening at a reception, of all places, the Royal Mews. Her guests were drawn from the freemen of the worshipful company of the Carmen, with the exception of 4 or 5 veterans. The 20 royal carriages had been transferred to the Windsor for imminent duties of the royal ascot, and their vacant stalls were sluiced and cleansed. A buffet was set up in classic style, state stable style. The state harness rooms were burnished and polished, and they were polished to perfection. The princess invariably makes a point of returning hospitality, and since appointing her a liveryman, the company of Carmen had lunched or dined her repeatedly in her dignified new Guild Hall in Gresham Street. From 1512, the Carmen had been a monopoly in plying for hire within the City of London. In return, hold the right to move the chattel of the royal household whenever it's needful. All licensed carters must be free men of the company to this day. The choice of the Royal Mews was appropriate and original, and the princess made an excellent guide. Knowing even the names of the 40 leather parts of the state harness, headpiece, basepiece, winker stays, brow band, and so on, and able to recite them like a litany. It was also a neatly appropriate touch. The Carmen had appointed her master of the worshipful company for 1987. None knew that evening of her elevated status, for pending the official announcement, Her Royal Highness kept the news to herself, and yet the public knew nothing. Yet the Carmen were later to feel privileged in having been first to share a reflection of her heightened honor. In some of the small whispers leaked, it was deceptive. Friday, 12 June, saw in the news a muted, if curiously accurate, informed opinion that Princess Anne might shortly become the Princess Royal. Was the Queen augmenting her daughter's title as a feminist gesture to accompany the outstanding achievement of Mrs. Thatcher's third victory? As we can now recognize, Miss Thatcher had nothing whatsoever to do with it. The palace was vehement on that point. A day or two after Prince Philip's family announcement, Fleet Street anticipated that the morning of 13 June would see the London Gazette, the official voice of government, issuing the list of the Queen's birthday honors as usual. But the press did not foresee the one-page supplement of the Gazette on Friday, June 12th, in which a single paragraph was hastened into print. The Queen has been graciously pleased to declare that Her Majesty's daughter, Her Royal Highness Anne Elizabeth Alice Louise, Mrs. Mark Phillips, shall henceforth bear the style and the title of Princess Royal. By complete chance, it happened that the occasion might have been designed for the welcome and acclaim of Princess Anne's first public evening in her new and more demanding role. The actual occasion has been announced as a summer banquet at Hampton Court to celebrate the centenary of the St. John Ambulance Brigade. And for perhaps the first time in present reign, the old palace positively glowed with light, and it was filled with music and festive splendor. Her Majesty's Royal Marines beat retreat in the forecourt, and there too were fireworks after dusk. The lady left their wraps in the communications gallery, as if themselves vying for the portraits of the ladies of Charles II's court on the paneled walls. The gentleman wore contemporary black tie, but with the Lord Prior Earl Cathcart greeting the guests, magnificent in his St. Job's robes. The princess was conducted by the Queen's staircase and entered Henry VIII's great hall to a fanfare of trumpets. The hall, gorgeously transformed into a bower of all white flowers. Princess Anne took her most glamorous. She looked her most glamorous, and wrote the famed Jennifer of Harper's and Queen, wearing a crystal embroidered pastel chiffon evening dress. From the top table, the rumor spread that she would not assume her new title until midnight. But in fact, she left at 10:30 p.m., and at the height of the fireworks to rendezvous with her husband at the palace, and arrived at the Savoy at 11:40 p.m. for a ball to benefit one of her favorite charities again, the Home Farm Trust, which provides sheltered country accommodation for people with learning disabilities. These were the precise times given in the next morning's court circular, and it may be true that the Queen's permission, the exacting author for that one night, was none other than Captain Mark Phillips himself. Not many days later, I had the occasion to write to the palace on the princess's future writing events, a topic not normally dealt with there, and in replying, her friendly but circumspect personal private secretary, Mr. David Hudson, added a cheerful impromptu postscript. Her Royal Highness is delighted to have been given the title the Princess Royal. And that is the end of that chapter. So I hope you'll enjoy it, and you can always listen to it. You can amp up the speed on these YouTube channels, and step it up a little bit if you're listening to it on this YouTube channel. But if you don't want to listen to it from me, you can download it on Audible. It's only 1 credit and it's a wonderful read. I really recommend it. I wouldn't be reading it, taking the time to read it to people out in YouTube world if I didn't think it was a worthy read if you're interested in the royal family. So I'm going to end this section and hope that people find it interesting. So thank you very much for listening.